Well, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We're waiting for our presenter, and we'll get right into the webinar as soon as Smith is able to join us. Is there a reason that we can't see the presenters?
The other attendees.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like he is a part of this. George W. Smith. I believe because it's set as a webinar. There we go.
Well, what do we gotta do to get him in here?
Hello,
Let
can you
make
hear
one
me?
of it.
Yes. Good afternoon, Dr. Smith. Thanks.
I'm getting a prompt that says join as panelist or stay as attendee.
Join as panelists so you can share your screen if you have PowerPoints that you're planning to share. So what I'll do is introduce our webinar series and introduce you, and then turn it over to you for your
All right.
presentation. Will you be sharing PowerPoints with us?
Yeah, I will. I've got one video embedded. Hopefully that'll work. So I may have to make sure the right part of my screen is showing. I'm also getting a prompt that you can't start your video because the host has stopped it, but I'm assuming that's okay once I share screen.
Yeah, I believe it should work. Yeah, I believe
Okay.
as soon as you start.
Okay.
All right, so let's get started then. And I'd like to thank the participants for joining us for this webinar. I'm Rex Lamore. I'm Director of the Center for Community and Economic Development and a member of the MSU Circular Economy Working Group that's been looking at issues and opportunities at Michigan State University related to advancing research, outreach, and instruction around issues of circularity. And just as a brief orientation, a circular economy is a system where materials never become waste and nature is regenerated. In a circular economy, products and materials are kept in circulation through processes like maintenance, reuse, refurbishment, remanufacturing, recycling, and composting. The circular economy contributes to climate change and other global challenges through valuing biodiversity and valuing water quality and reducing pollution and decoupling economic activity from the linear production model of take, make, and waste. And I'm proud to say that there are many faculty across this campus who are currently involved in a number of activities related to circularity. And one of the ways that we've been facilitating networking and collaboration is through a series of informal webinars that colleagues have offered to share with their colleagues here at MSU. And so this is one of our informal webinar conversations. We will be recording the webinar and then sharing it on our webpage. And so I'd like to suggest we hold questions until the end of Dr. Smith's presentation, and then we can have a dialogue on some of the issues that he may have shared with us or the opportunities that you may see in advancing circularity at MSU. And for some of you who may not be aware, tomorrow at 4 o'clock, that would be Thursday, May 2nd, we'll be hosting Senator Singh in the Union Building at 4 o'clock to discuss Senate Bill 704, which looks at allocating financial resources to Michigan State University through the Solid Waste Management Fund and that the state of Michigan operates to advance circularity research, instruction, and outreach. And so if you haven't already reserved your attendance and you are able to join us tomorrow at 4 o'clock, please do so. We're looking forward to an update from the senator on what the status of that bill is and how likely it is to get through the legislature and actually result in some additional resources to advance our work in this emerging field of scholarship. And so with that, let me introduce our esteemed presenter today. I'm very excited that Dr. Smith is able to join us. I suspect many of you are familiar with the role that Dr. Smith plays here at Michigan State University. He did his graduate work at the University of Missouri in Columbia, and he joined MSU in 1997 and is currently director of our Ag Bio Research and is a senior associate dean for research, where he leads a number of strategic initiatives and administers research efforts to address food systems and environmental challenges in Michigan and beyond. And with his background in animal science, Dr. Smith has researched issues related to dairy cattle reproduction before transitioning to a full-time research administrator in 2020. He's authored over 140 journal articles, 17 book chapters, and has secured enough, significant funding for our ag research and other activities related to a bioeconomy and some of the circular areas that we're all interested in. He oversees approximately 300 scientists from seven MSU colleges and 15 outlying research centers, highlighting his commitment to interdisciplinary collaboration. It's a pleasure to have you with us this afternoon, Dr. Smith. We're looking forward to your insights on circular economy and the kind of opportunities that Ag Bio is pursuing. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Rex. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some information with you all today. I'm far from an expert in the topic or concept of a circular economy. So I may very well learn some things for you all today. And I hope you get a little bit more insight about Ag Bio Research, what our mission is, some of the issues at the national level in agriculture that make the concept of circularity even more important, some insight into a few ongoing areas for the future, which will be receiving attention as part of the MSU Ag Bio Research portfolio, and probably wrap up at the end with a new initiative that I think really does kind of very, very well illustrate the potential here for generating a circular economy in the context that Rex shared earlier. So before I start, I just want to make sure I can navigate the screen share and get the right panel. So can everyone see my screen currently?
Yep, we have it in your presentation mode.
Okay, so let me convert it to slideshow real quick. And you would think I would know how to do this after how many numerous presentations and Zoom meetings and all that. So can you still see me?
Yes, sir.
Got it. All right. Thank you. So yeah, with that an overview, I want to kind of get into my presentation. And as I start to talk about Ag Bio Research, I've got a really short video that I always like to share that kind of gives a general feel for the nature and type of the work we do. So I'm crossing my fingers. It'll work. I think it should. So hang on here a second.
We're in the field. We're on the farm. Stream, the greenhouse, the lab.
Yes.
We're conducting leading edge research and discovering innovative and practical.
We're not seeing the video, Doc.
Climate change.
All right.
Invasive species.
Let me see.
And food production.
Give me a second. Technical difficulties. Let me go back to new share. Let's try this. Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
All right. So what I'm going to do is go back to the beginning. And we'll try again. It's like a minute and a half total. So
we're in the field. We're on the farm. Stream, the greenhouse, the lab. We're conducting leading edge research and discovering innovative and practical solutions to sustainability, climate change, invasive species, to plant and animal diseases, and food production. We're partnering with agricultural and natural resource industries to enhance the quality of life in Michigan, in our country, and beyond. We're researchers, problem solvers, collaborators, working for growers and producers. Because we care about our natural resources, food safety and food security, health and nutrition, and conserving our ecosystems for today and for our future. We are Michigan State University Ag Bio Research.
All right, I apologize for the technical difficulties. If that didn't work well, it's certainly on our Ag Bio Research webpage, but it just kind of gives an overview of who we are and what we're about. So kind of then pivoting next to the kind of a little bit more information about Ag Bio Research, our history and what we do. Our roots trace back to the origins of the land grant mission. You know, we had the Morrill Act passage, which established land grant universities. About 25 years later, the Hatch Act was passed, which established a research station in every land grant institution with the goal to conduct practical research on behalf of farmers. That still remains a fundamental part of our mission today. But what the breadth and depth of scope of what we do has expanded significantly to not only meet that basic mission to serve the needs of agriculture, but more broadly to serve the needs of the natural resources sector, Michiganders in general, and people in this country and across the globe. And again, our name was changed to MSU Ag Bio Research in 2011. Original name was the Michigan Agricultural Experiment Station. People hear that term, they think about, okay, a farm somewhere. That's a big part of what we do, but there's much more to it than that. So I want to share a little bit with you of how we operate in our budget and the scope of what we're trying to manage. And as Rex said, we are all about kind of trying to be a catalyst for the research enterprise at Michigan State University in a multidisciplinary fashion across 7 colleges. The foundation of our budget is the competitive grants, which 100% of the credit for that goes to our scientists who are writing the grants, competing for funding, and doing the great work to sort of advance agriculture and deal with issues related to the environment in the state and beyond. However, I do want to draw your attention specifically to our state appropriations, which are really the heart and soul and foundation of what we do and allow us to invest broadly in 300 faculty across 7 different colleges. When I talk about investing broadly, that means we help support faculty salaries, we help pay for startup funds and support infrastructure. We also get federal funding from the National Institutes of Food and Agriculture, we refer to as capacity funding. And that capacity funding relates back to the origins of the agriculture experiment stations at every land grant institution. By federal mandate, states are required to match those federal dollars 1-to-1. And as you can see here, the state of Michigan matches those federal dollars at a level much over 1-to-1 and really closer to 5-to-1 or a little over. Small amount of general fund from the university, but we do operate as a separate funding line within the higher education budget from the rest of MSU. The same is true for MSU Extension due to our unique mission relative to other universities in the state. And I mentioned support for faculty in terms of salaries and startups. We also support an extensive network of research infrastructure. There's over 18 facilities on campus, on South Campus farms, and on the main campus that help facilitate ongoing research related to our portfolio. And we have 15 outlying research stations throughout the state, which you can see here located on the map, that are all each in their own way a little bit unique in terms of climate, microenvironment, souls, and the part of our mission which they help facilitate. And really, we need this number of facilities, and that relates to the diversity of agriculture in Michigan, which we'll talk about later on. Our secret to success is partnerships. We have a strong history of partnerships supporting the work we do. One of the most important partnerships on campus is our partnership with Michigan State University Extension. They are the folks that take the science, that take this out, the discoveries out to people in the field, so where they can be applied in a positive fashion, impact their bottom line, whether we're talking about agriculture, whether we're talking about natural resources, whether we're talking about communities. Beyond that, we have a strong history of special partnerships, which has resulted due to efforts of our partners going to the legislature for additional funding. Our flagship program in that regard is called Project Green, with 3 E's, generating research and extension for economic and environmental needs. Over a 25-year history, it was a direct result of the agriculture industries going to the state of Michigan and advocating for additional funding for competitive grants and for a smaller number of positions to help plant-based agriculture be competitive and deal with environmental needs. And in the first 20 years of that program, the economic return to the state was over $2.5 billion. And the annual appropriation is about $5.2 million. So pretty good return on investment. Other examples are the Michigan Tree Fruit Commission, who they actually have what's called a checkoff program, where a small amount of revenues from fruit that are sold go back into this entity, and they made the strategic decision to help ag bio research with infrastructure. So the first 5 years of this program, the state had a 1-to-1 match for the dollars the Tree Fruit Commission was putting into infrastructure at our research stations throughout the state. The state funding went away, but they have stayed true to their mission. For over 10 years, they've been providing annual funding to help support research infrastructure on our facilities across the state, a direct reflection of the value that they place on the work that our scientists do. Michigan Alliance for Animal Agriculture, very similar in nature to Project Green, but it doesn't have a 25-year history. State funding started in 2017, but similar concept. Agriculture industry going to the state for additional money for applied research and extension projects to solve the immediate needs of our animal agriculture industries in the state. Our commodity groups can set priorities each year, update them. Our faculty write grants to address those priorities, and that's a big component of how funding decisions are made. Infrastructure, very recently, there was a $53 million investment from the state of Michigan into funding towards a new dairy facility and updating our greenhouses. This was a long-standing need in infrastructure that's really the foundation of all of the work we do in agriculture. So it was a great start. We had the groundbreaking ceremonies for the 2 facilities here a couple of weeks ago. They're scheduled to be done really end of 2025, early 2026. So we look forward to the groundbreaking facilities and starting a lot of great work there. And you hear a little bit more about the dairy facility later on in my talk. And then a new initiative, which I'll mention briefly later on, related to climate resiliency of agriculture. So before we talk about Michigan, I want to give you a little bit of feel for some of the issues related to agriculture in the United States, and some of these issues that really kind of, I think, emphasize why this concept of circularity is going to be even more and more important in the future to help farms survive, to increase livelihood, and to provide other sources of revenue. Secretary Vilsack recently announced some data in late winter or spring. It was basically the results of the 2022 Census of Agriculture, which has just been reported. And he talked specifically about the loss of farms. Since 1980, there have been over 500,000 farms lost in the United States. And if you try to put that in conventional terms of what that means, that would be equivalent to losing every farm today in North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, Nebraska, Colorado, Missouri, and Oklahoma. So we're seeing a shift in agriculture, less farms, larger farms. Accompanying that was a significant loss of acres of farmland since 1980, 151 million acres of farmland no longer being used for agriculture. And that is equivalent like acreage to the entire landmass in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Maryland, and a significant part of Virginia. And we
Wow.
can't produce more farmland. We can't create more farmland. It's a finite resource. So how we utilize the farmland we have efficiently in environmentally sustainable fashion is critical to the future. And how we create new sources of revenue for our farmers of all sizes is going to really be critical. Third piece of data I want to share with you is operations with greater than $500,000 in annual sales account for 89% of farm income. And that is coming from 7% of farmers. 1.6 million farm share, 11% of the income. That's the remaining 93% of the farmers. So the trend, the take-home message here is if you want to survive in agriculture in the current paradigm, you either have to get big or get out. So the key is how to provide new sources of revenue, new scenarios where farmers can have additional sources of income beyond just the sales of the traditional commodity they produce, to provide additional sources of revenue and opportunities for small to medium-sized farmers to continue to stay in business, and opportunities for larger farmers to be more diversified in terms of sources of revenue. So, and yeah, part of this is duplicative. I apologize. So I want to make a point before we move on, is getting big is not an easy thing to do either. That requires land, that requires capital, and that requires access to credit. The pressures on farmland are also increasing as well due to other initiatives like the focus on renewable energy and solar energy, and we'll touch on a little bit later in our philosophy on that. So it's not easy for farmers that want to get big to have a venue to get big. There's not easy paths forward for people that aren't in agriculture to get into agriculture and have a path forward to generate a livelihood. Lots of investments at the federal level in these areas, some with limiting parts of success. The key is diversifying the sources of income and making better use of everything that goes in and comes out. Hence, in my simple terms, the concept that Rex described. So I want to give you a few examples, not that these are big examples of ongoing areas at Michigan State, but some of the things that are out there in the agriculture sector that do have potential. But in some instances, there are downsides to these concepts. So I pulled a few examples. There's many, many more out there. One that's talked about in the soybean industry is a soybean oil-based asphalt enhancer. It's been shown to increase life cycle of pavement by 40%. There have been some trials in Michigan, I want to say in Livingston County, testing this out to see how it will work. So basically, it's high oleic acid soybean oils is extracted from the soybeans. Not an uncommon practice. Soybean oil is used for lots of things. This can be a replacement to petroleum-based products. And then what's left over, the soybean meal, that's a common feedstuff for livestock. So just looking at additional ways to use the soybean oil in non-traditional, non-agriculture, non-food related applications. Another one that everyone's familiar with anytime you go to the gas pumps is ethanol. That's been a big shift in our corn industry is towards production of ethanol. Currently, 40% of the corn produced in the US goes to ethanol. Again, it's a common fuel additive. Same thing, as it's processed, the remnants after the ethanol is produced is referred to as distiller's grain, which is fed to livestock and poultry commonly. And you look at some of these alternative products, it's both converting the primary commodity into other products, but also the corn stalks. What's left? How do you utilize those components as well? And then the big one that's, I think, talked about a lot, but I would say has some controversy associated with it in terms of the implications for agriculture is sustainable aviation fuel. Secretary Vilsack talks about this all the time. You know, with current technology, getting on a battery-powered airplane and flying across the ocean is not practical. It's just not going to happen. So Are there more climate-friendly sources of aviation fuel that could be utilized that are renewable? So there's a big emphasis on development of sustainable aviation fuel. Lots of types of waste commodities, products can go into producing sustainable aviation fuel. Lots of talk about corn or soybeans as feedstocks. And on the corn sector, my understanding, again, I'm not an expert, is through further processing of ethanol, it can be converted to sustainable aviation fuel. The projected demand for sustainable aviation fuel, I believe in this country, is over 35 billion gallons to sort of fuel the aviation industry. For every gallon of sustainable aviation fuel, it takes 1.7 gallons of ethanol. That would equate to 110 million acres of corn required just for the production of sustainable aviation fuel. That's more corn than we have the capacity to produce in the United States currently. And you talk about the other issues for agriculture. If agriculture shifts tremendously to producing corn for sustainable aviation fuel, I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's a venue that's being proposed to develop more climate-friendly fuels per airplanes and things like that, but there is a cost. And 37.1 million acres of corn are already used for ethanol production. And some would make the case, if you look at total environmental footprint, is that really a win or not? But I'm putting it on the radar because there's big sources, big emphasis on this at the federal level, and there will be more research ultimately taking place in the agricultural sector focused on this. Another aspect I'm not going to spend a lot of time about, but just to sort of throw out there for people to consider is, ecosystem services. This relates back to the concept is, would the consumer be willing to pay more for food, for agricultural commodities that are produced in a fashion that's more climate friendly? In the marketplace, or if you look at what some of our food producing companies can do in terms of insets or potentially offsets for other companies. You hear lots of talk about what would be of value. Obviously, soil carbon is a big one that's gotten a lot of attention. Reduced greenhouse gas production, and even ecosystem services and value associated for farming agricultural practices that promote, maintain water quality and are efficient in terms of use of water. Emerging area for the future, lots of interest, lots of research. Some of that ongoing at Michigan State, will likely be even a bigger area of emphasis in the future. But the key questions are, what is the value or revenue attached to the farmer? It's not that farmers don't want to do the right thing, but for many of them, the margins are so small that the threat to their livelihood is such that there are lots of things they might like to do, but the big question is, can I afford to do it? Will I still be able to stay in business? That is the importance of research and extension, to answer those questions and provide that information to farmers. And how do you link this value to the supply chain and the consumers? And again, a lot of this relates to talk about corporate social responsibility goals and greenhouse gas reductions, and that whole controversial area with a lot of talk and interest in. So a bit beyond the scope of this presentation, but in some ways it's not. It's other sources of revenue for farmers on their operations, if they can do things differently, capture value for production practices, principles that allow them to help feed the world, but also do it in a more climate-friendly fashion. So let's pivot a little bit and talk some about Michigan and what we have here and what we bring to the table. We talk a lot about Michigan agriculture. I mentioned previously the diversity. We used to brag all the time about Michigan being the second most diverse agricultural state in the country, producing 300 commodities. California produces 400. So this brilliant guy named Pete Lemmer at Greenstone Farm Credit Services said we need to throw that out and talk differently about Michigan agriculture. Michigan is the most diverse agricultural state in the country with a reliable source of water. And you look at the challenges that have been ongoing in California with 7+ years of drought, and now what they're dealing with, erratic rainfall and whatnot. I think there is some truth in this statement. It's really resonated with our agricultural community. It's resonated with policymakers, and it's on us to develop the programs to help agriculture not just survive, but thrive in a more environmentally sustainable fashion, and making sure we make efficient use of the water we have and protect the quality of the water we have. And there are currently challenges in that area. So just an insight a little bit in some of the work we're doing, Jason Roundtree and Bruno Basso leading the Center for Regenerative Agriculture, doing some really foundational work, thinking about different models for agriculture, kind of relating to ecosystem services and what we talked about. And this whole concept of regenerative agriculture, which is a bit of a paradigm shift in terms of key principles. You don't till, you keep the soil covered, you promote diversity of what you're producing, you incorporate livestock. By doing that, you can dramatically increase the amount of carbon that the plants pull out of the atmosphere and sequester in the soil. You can promote soil health, you can increase water holding capacity of the land, the farmland, whether you're talking about pasture or crops, increase diversity, a whole new concept in terms of differences in production agriculture that are good for the environment and provide potential for farmers to continue to be productive and hopefully profitable. I would say we have 2 people that are leading in the entire country or beyond in this area. They've started this center. They can talk more about this effort than I can. They're knowledgeable ones, but I just wanted you to all have an idea that this is ongoing. A little bit more about the Agricultural Climate Resiliency Program. This was new funding in the current fiscal year's budget provided by the state. It was a direct result of Quentin Tyler, the Extension Director, and myself meeting with our partners in the plant-based agriculture industries and having a very candid conversation. Tell us what's on your mind. What are the biggest challenges for the future? What do you think are the threats to Michigan agriculture and beyond? And without a doubt, every single response, climate and water, climate and water, climate and water. I would say it's fair to say, and I think our partners in agriculture would say the same thing, the sort of perception or opinion of climate change in agriculture has changed dramatically in the past decade. Farmers are seeing and experiencing the impacts of erratic weather, whether it be extreme rainfall, whether it be droughts, and the impact that it has on their bottom line. I would say the farmers we talked to, which were leaders of our commodity groups, also are concerned about climate change and want to make a more positive contribution to greenhouse gas mitigation. And I would say the water issues, which we know are controversial in the state, are very much on their mind. They want to do better. They want alternatives, and recognizing that research and extension are the key. So the result was a $6 million appropriation in the current fiscal year, $1 million recurring for 6 new faculty positions and 2 extension educators to kind of fill in the gaps. So we have the type of broad multidisciplinary teams to address the priorities that our stakeholders identified, then $5 million for a new competitive grants program. The basic focal areas for this new initiative, again, were focused on climate change mitigation, soil health. Healthy soil is critical not only to productivity of agricultural lands, but the ability to pull carbon out of the atmosphere. The impact of climate on plant health, climate changes, you get new bugs, you get new diseases, and then water issues, how to make more efficient use of the water we have and protect water quality. So those new positions are focused in those areas. The grants program, these were designed to be large multidisciplinary grants, internal grants. 3 years of funding for each proposal at $1.25 million. We launched the RFP, had a webinar, had over 60 people on the webinar interested in it. Tremendous response to the RFP. Some very, very talented teams. The folks who would expect to apply applied, and many, many more proposals worthy of funding were submitted than what we can fund. And if the money comes forward recurring, so the grants program continue, I think we'll even attract a bigger audience of MSU faculty interested in being part of these teams and applying. So we're really excited about this initiative. It's important for agriculture and will impact, I would say, Michiganders in the state as a whole. So I'm doing, I think I'm doing okay timing wise. So I want to pivot now to talk a little bit about renewable energy, some of our thoughts, some areas we'd like to engage in, which we haven't had as much opportunity yet, although we're making a case. Then talk about a major programmatic foci linked to the new dairy facility and give you a flavor of that. I do know Barry Bradford said he's putting together some slides for a shorter presentation. He will likely get into the more of the details than I will on this subject, which is good, but this will be a great info. So when we talk about renewable energy, you know, everyone is familiar with the goals of the state to increase their footprint of renewable energy. There's also certainly significant controversy right now related to how siting decisions for renewable energy are made in terms of at the local community level versus at the state level. I'm not going to get into all of that. What I will tell you is we've done listening sessions across the state, meeting with stakeholders, meeting with partners, meeting with people in communities to learn about what's on their mind. We've done like 20 of them so far. Probably at 90% of those, the topic of agricultural land and solar panels came up. It is a very, very sensitive topic for a whole host of issues, reasons. And I would say the agriculture community is split on this issue. You know, some would say multi-generational farm, the kids don't want to farm. You look at the revenues available, cash rent for agricultural land, depending where you're at, $150, $300 an acre. A 30-year fixed price contract with guaranteed revenues of over $1,000 per acre per year. If you allow your land to be converted to renewable energy and solar panels, you know, that's a tough one. Other people will say, look, the issue we talked about, we're losing farmland all the time. If more and more farmland is converted to solar fields, you know, is that good for agriculture? Is that good for food security? My response to that would be, it doesn't have to be an either or, it can be an and. And so we've been aggressively talking to the renewable energy companies about opportunities to test that concept here in Michigan. Our growing seasons are different. Our commodities are different. Are there opportunities for commodities to be produced under solar panels in Michigan where, you know, the landowners, the producers can benefit not only from the contracts with the energy companies, but still be involved in agriculture and produce commodities, food, you know, things that are viable. That takes research to tell farmers, what can we grow under solar panels in Michigan? What is the cost of starting out? What can you expect? How do you manage these food crops, et cetera, under solar panels? Do I personally believe they'll ever be, you know, tall enough that you could drive a combine under them? Who knows with technology? I'd say probably not, but we are diverse in Michigan. We produce a whole lot of different things. Could you grow blueberries under solar panels? Could you grow Christmas trees under solar panels? You know, what would it take to do that? In my mind, these are viable questions. So we're continuing to advocate for that. We're interested in kind of starting some demonstration projects at some of our research stations. I think it's important to provide data in a Michigan-centric context so farmers can see, look, this is what has been done in the state of Michigan. This is the bottom line. The energy companies can see the same thing. So we don't have a huge footprint there, but it's an area where we continue to talk about the importance in partnering to address those questions. So now the final 5 minutes, maybe, I want to talk about anaerobic digestion and the vision for the future for our new dairy facility. When we talk about anaerobic digestion, we're talking about converting waste products, whether it be animal manure or whether it be food waste, into renewable energy. That is a big part of the programmatic justification for our new dairy facility, which we just had the groundbreaking and will be built on South Campus, just south of the current dairy facility, is to develop viable strategies, procedures, technologies, so this technology can be implemented on farms of all sizes. Anaerobic digestion is not new. There are digesters in the state of Michigan and other states. They're primarily geared towards large dairies because there's a significant capital investment involved in the digester itself. And then if the goal is to produce renewable natural gas instead of electricity, the technology to convert the biogas to purify it into renewable natural gas and get it into the pipelines, there's a cost associated. But the advantage of that is you can dramatically reduce the carbon footprint of a dairy farm. You can have a positive contribution to greenhouse gas mitigation if food waste is going into an anaerobic digester instead of going into a landfill, because food waste is also a major source of greenhouse gas emissions. And the natural gas or energy that's produced is in fact renewable. So that was a major part of the programmatic vision for the new dairy facility. I think it's part of what actually helped to sell it. And so we are working to put the pieces in place to try to do that. So it's really about developing markets and strategies. So this will cash flow appropriately. So a dairy farmer can go to their lending agency and say, look, I want to make this investment. Here are the strategies. You know, if you're talking about value, if you're just converting the biogas into electricity, the value is less as a commodity to produce. At our digester on South Campus, that biogas is converted to electricity. The value is a little over 8 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's okay. That can help dairy farms be more sustainable in terms of producing their own energy and have a positive impact. That's an important area where we're collecting data to try to make those comparisons. But in terms of a commodity to actually market and sell, less potential there as with some other strategies. So one of the things Dr. Wei Lau has proposed, and it's kind of a really interesting idea, is can you take that electricity that's produced and use it to charge electric vehicles? Can it be a source of charging stations in rural communities where we know that's a limiting factor? Would that pencil out? If you look at little over 8 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity going on the grid versus the value of you charging an EV 3 to 4 to 5-fold higher. So there's some infrastructure constraints. How would people get there? How well would it be kind of utilized? Is it, personal EVs? Is it trucks? Is it charging batteries that go into EVs? Interesting question. Is it going to work? I don't know, but it's an area that Dr. Lau wants to pursue. And then the second area of interest is renewable natural gas. Again, you look at the value of renewable natural gas versus the value of electricity, significantly greater. But there's a huge infrastructure investment involved. Hence, a lot of the digesters who are being funded for renewable natural gas, companies will come in, put the entire cost of the digester, hook them up to the pipeline, and guarantee dairy farms a price. Much, much less than the commercial value, but nevertheless, they foot the bill for all the capital investment. That's an additional source of revenue for farms beyond just selling milk or cull animals. And so it's working. But how do you create a system where this is viable for multiple small to medium-sized farms? Maybe it's cooperatives where farms are coming together and pooling what they produce, and that will create the volume such that, the capital investment will be a little bit easier and the marketing opportunities at a higher level will present themselves. So this kind of diagram what Dr. Lau created kind of illustrates the general concepts. I won't go through all of it. We talk about the dairy industry. The major commodity produced is milk. What do you do with the animal waste? We know in the current models, in terms of land application, significant controversy associated with that. So the model is through anaerobic digestion to generate biomethane that can either be converted to renewable natural gas or electricity, but it doesn't stop there. So the second part of this model, which is very, very, I think, exciting, and less work has been done, is how can you also link technology to pull the nutrients out of the waste? So you're removing the nitrogen, you're removing the phosphorus, you have another commodity that dairy farmers can sell, and you're left with water that could be used to irrigate cropland. Also better control of some of the nutrient management issues. We look at the geopolitical conflict, you know, in Ukraine, what was one of the most earliest impacts of that on agriculture? The cost of fertilizer went through the roof because we are heavily dependent on importing nutrients from other countries. Will this provide a venue for us to be more self-sufficient? Would this provide a venue for agriculture to do a better job applying nutrients, just what's needed? Would these provide opportunities both through the renewable energy piece and pulling the nutrients out for additional sources of revenue for dairy farmers? I think it's very, very possible. That's why the research and extension efforts are needed. New sources of revenue, new markets, better utilizing everything that goes in the cow, try to reutilize what comes back out. A lot of work to be done, major programmatic area of focus. We look forward to, you know, getting started and developing the programs, doing the research, which we think can make a difference, not just for the dairy industry in the state, but for Michiganders as a whole, because it'll address some of the pressing environmental issues that are of concern. So with that, I think I left about 10 minutes. That's kind of what I wanted to cover today, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Smith. That was a very informative presentation and it covered a number of topical areas. I don't see any immediate questions in our chat room. If anyone has something, oh, we do have a hand raised. So let us go to the chat room here and see if we can, Ajit has a question.
Let me see if he can talk.
Yeah.
Right.
Ajit, you should be able to speak and ask your question.
Okay, thank you, Rex, and thank you, George, for excellent presentation. I just wanted to ask a question about another pathway for anaerobic digester, and that is the compressed biogas.
Right.
And I know when we were designing or discussing the concept of digester on campus, I really wanted to push Fred Poston to, rather than going to the electricity route, go to the compressed biogas route and run all the farm fleets on the compressed biogas. And he said it would have taken only $500 kit to convert it from gasoline to compressed biogas. He didn't want to spend that, so we went to get that route. So anyway, in today's concept, instead of having a charging station on any farm, what if you have a filling station with compressed biogas? So anybody who has a kit for running a vehicle on compressed biogas can go and fill it rather than stand there for an hour charging their vehicle on a farm. And the reason I'm saying this technology is commercialized. Sweden, if you go to Stockholm, all city buses are running on compressed biogas. Korea has this technology well developed. So I'm just wondering, is this a possible demonstration for this dairy farm that's going up, that we have a filling station for compressed biogas rather than charging a station to charge your batteries?
Yeah, well, Gene, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because that concept has been discussed at a couple levels. My answer to you would be yes, that would be our hope. We foresee this facility as being a test bed for a whole host of different technologies to provide the data and put it into application So yeah, I think that's a possibility. Another aspect of the programmatic vision for the new facility, which I didn't talk about, Ajit, but relates to your question directly, is our goal would to have this new dairy facility utilize equipment that's 100% powered by renewable energy. And we're trying to work with companies to get donations to kind of present that concept out there. We think that would be good for their bottom line because the dairy industry can hear specifically from a dairy farm who is using equipment powered by compressed natural gas, or maybe in some cases it's electric powered. So we're hopeful that they'll be willing to partner with us and cut us a deal so we don't have to front the full cost of that. But that is our goal ultimately, because it's another way to sort of test and demonstrate new sustainability concepts, which we think will be good for the industry. So yeah, Ajit, thanks for mentioning that. That would be another area that's on the radar that we're hopeful to be able to address.
Thank you, George.
Any other questions from the participants?
It looks like we have a chat. In the chat, Richard K. Kobe.
Do you want to just, while we're trying to get Dr. Kobe up online here, let me ask a question, Dr. Smith. You described the transition of agriculture from smaller farms to larger farms and the challenges that presents and the opportunities. A lot of what we're seeing in innovation is with the smaller organic farming sector where they're utilizing organic processes. Do you fear that if we continue to move sort of these larger farm sector, larger farm concentration, we'll lose the innovative and creativity that's occurring in that smaller urban gardening, organic farming sector? Or do you see those sectors being able to survive even in this future scenario?
Rex, I would say, you know, what you described is a threat for the future of agriculture and is really a threat for the future of food security. As the pathways for economic and environmental sustainability go away to small and medium-sized farms, we're going to be more and more reliant on large farms. We're going to be more and more reliant on importing food that people in this country consume. And the concept has been presented out there. I know our representative who's on the House Agricultural Committee frequently says food security is national security. So we need a path forward for our organic producers, our small producers, our medium-sized producers, and our large producers, and to be able to, my opinion, shift to more local regional food systems. I'll share one story, and then if Rich can't kind of lock in, I'll try to answer his question. I was on a leadership program and spent some time in California agriculture. And I love to tell this story. And I learned so much about the challenges from touring around and being out there. So this person came in to give a presentation. He was the CEO of the largest carrot producing company in the US. I guess they created the technology for baby carrots or whatever. And his comment was, yeah, the climate issues are impacting us. We used to be able to get all the carrots we need from California. Now we don't care. We will buy carrots from anywhere in the country, ship them to California to be processed, and then ship them back across the country for distribution. In my mind, that's just crazy. So that isn't a resilient food system. So I'll stop there. Rich, looking forward to trying to answer your question.
Hi, George. Thanks for the interesting and informative talk. So your last story there, I think, is a good segue to this question. And so what do you think the prospects are overall of moving agriculture towards overall carbon or greenhouse gas neutrality? You know, with the ag sector accounting for about 10% of greenhouse gas emissions now. And it's the current practices. It's hard to change. It's pretty heavily energy intensive production systems and the transportation that you raised. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's important for the research enterprise and extension to continue to do the research to provide alternatives and new pathways forward for alternative systems to do that. I think the most expedient way for this to change is if it came from the marketplace. And I'll give you one relevant example. There have been changes in rules in terms of animal welfare and poultry is one example that changed, somewhat recently. That was a situation where the marketplace said, okay, we're not going to do it this way anymore. We need an alternative. Would the consumer value that enough to pay more on their own? How many people have the means to go in a grocery store and pay more for food because it's consistent with their social norms? Some people do. A lot of people don't. That's the reality of our country and, the economics and the everyday reality of people, let alone people in urban and rural areas right now in this country who don't even have access to healthy food and produce to buy in their communities. So I think it's going to take time, Rich. I'm optimistic we can make a difference. And certainly the work that you're doing on the forestry side, which we didn't talk about in terms of greenhouse gas mitigation, is also very, very relevant. So I'm hoping we can make a difference, but what will it take to make that major shift? There's some political headwinds which would have to be navigated. And my guess would be it's going to have to come from the retail side, the folks that buy our commodities, to say we're not doing things this way anymore.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so Doc, we're at 2:00. I know you have many things on your agenda to take care of today. I want to thank you for an excellent presentation. I want to thank our participants for joining us. If others who joined us today have topics they would like to share with the Circular Economy Network, please email me. We can facilitate a webinar video conversation around your research, instruction, and outreach. Our plan is to make this product available online, so we'll let you know when it's up and online. And again, Doc, thanks so much for your leadership in helping us transition to a 21st century agricultural economy. It's so critical to our daily lives and to our state. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Rex. I appreciate the opportunity. Bye-bye.